Hello, everyone. So today, joining me is Mr. Dave Inder Kumar, and he's joining from New York. And he is a corporate lawyer. He works in a very unique field where he works with both the legal field as a lawyer, and he also advises a lot of technology firms. So I thought it would be a great idea to talk to him and learn more about how to build a career in corporate law and technology. I'm going to introduce. So first of all, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here and answer questions, and I hope I can be useful. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And so a little introduction. So he's the managing director of Kumar and Mule. It's LLP, and it has offices both in San Francisco and New York. And he's also an executive director at Just Entonement, and he has done his Juris Doctor from New York University School of Law. And before that, he is also a Stanford graduate in sociology. So I think the first question that I normally ask all my guests who are from the legal field is, why did you choose law? What was your reason to become a lawyer?
Well, that's a great question. I was pre-med when I went to Stanford. I was going to be a doctor.
All right.
And, so that was the plan, and I quickly learned. Actually, I didn't score very high marks in my chemistry classes, and decided that maybe I should choose another profession. But I had done a lot in high school, and I had always been fascinated by law, and it seemed like another thing to try, a natural other field that might suit me. So and the way it works in the U.S. is you don't major in law as an undergrad. You do that later. But you can take other classes. You take classes to expose you to legal concepts, basically. So I'd always been fascinated by international legal issues. Certainly, I'd always been fascinated by technology. So Stanford, in particular, has a very there's a big focus on computer science. There's a big focus on applied intelligence, applied technologies, and So I wanted to be involved in that. I knew moving forward as well, and then it came time to apply to law school, and so I remember thinking that I did want to work internationally, and I did want to have some connections to technology as well. So that's why I went to law school, and I think that's it. Basically, I'm doing what I mostly thought I'd be doing as a lawyer.
Yeah, great. I think we all all lawyers share a faith where I mean, I shouldn't say all lawyers, but most of us, we start in a different career, and then accidentally we end up being lawyers, and then we start loving it, and it's a great field. And I think when it comes to New York University School of Law, how was your experience there? I mean, was it something that you really enjoyed? Would you have chosen, if you go back, would you have chosen a different law school, or would you have chosen the same law school?
No, I really enjoyed my time there. I thought it was great, and I had some options in terms of where to go. So it was really a choice to go there, and I thought it was perfect. It was I wanted to have a different experience than the Stanford experience, which is a big campus, kind of away from big cities, which was also a great experience. But yes. I wanted to live in a city. I wanted to have like New York is the cultural and financial capital of the U.S. are certainly the financial capital, arguably a cultural capital, and so I wanted to live in a city that was kind of an international premier city like New York. I was choosing between a couple other schools in New York, but ultimately NYU is where I went, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities I had there.
So you are a licensed attorney both in California and in New York.
Correct.
So in the US, you have to get your license for each state. So how was your experience of the bar exam? I've heard that California is one of the most difficult bar to pass. Is that true? Was that true for you at least, or was it Was it the same as New York, or was it easy?
So back then, the California exam was 3 days. I don't know
Okay.
if it still is or not,
I think it's still
but it was
today.
that's what was made it so tough. It was 3 days, and New York was two, California was three, and when I took the bar, we were one of the first years that you could use your laptop. You had to apply, and if you applied in advance, there was a special room just for the laptops. And 10 minutes before the exam started, my laptop broke. Believe it
Oh,
or not. So I raised my hand, said hello. And so they just gave me a stack of blank paper and said, well, you're going to have to write it. So
wow.
I just wrote the exam, in the laptop room. But yeah, it was tough. I mean, I think the bar is definitely it's a trial that they make everyone go through, but and you have to put in the time. That's the thing,
Yes.
there's no way to get around it other than you have to study. You really have to study, and that's I think part of the exercise is
Yes.
to is to make sure that people taking it are serious. So yeah, it was tough. I'm glad I don't have to do it again. So
You're all that.
I took
A
the
lot of a
go
lot
ahead.
of students from University of London, they chose they normally, a lot of international students, I would say, in the US, they choose a New York bar, because New York is one of the states that allows international lawyers. So if you have done your LLB from, like, let's say, an institution like Blackstone here in Pakistan, and you have a University of London degree, and then you do your LLM in the
Yeah.
US, then after your LLM you can sit for New York bar. And I
Okay.
think there are like 5 or 6 states, and so a lot of the international students, they get their license from New York. But you didn't answer which one was the much tougher one.
Well, they were equally tough, but
Equally tough.
I would
Okay.
say just on time,
Okay.
California's was more. But I don't know if I feel like that's changed now. I don't remember, but I don't know if New York added a day or California took away a day. I don't remember, but I think they're equal now. I'm not
Oh,
100% sure, but they were both tough. Yeah, and I mean, I took the New York one first, so
okay.
that in a lot of ways I was prepared more for the California one. But then you added the extra day, and
Yeah.
it was like,
Yeah.
all right. So, but,
That,
but they were tough. They were tough. They were both very tough. And I think the New York one had more subjects, way more subjects on it. So you had to study more. You didn't know what they were going to ask you.
So I'm kind of intrigued. You have a master's in sociology from Stanford.
Correct. Yeah.
So sociology seems like a degree that would have a lot of I like. Did it help you build a background when you were studying law? Because, like,
Mm,
sociology is all about society, and then law is also trying to regulate society, or defining rules, and all the discussions, positive law, natural law, and all of that. So,
right.
like, yeah. So did it help knowing sociology and then going into law, or was it not that much helpful?
Yeah, I think if I had studied law more academically, I think it would have really helped. But
Okay.
at least in the U.S., law is still focused. It's very practical. They still they at the end of the day, it's more about knowing the rules of the court. And but I think when you think about the law more academically or philosophically, I think that sociology has really helped, and in particular, um, how societies work, how they change, why they change. Those are all questions that sociology tries to answer, and that obviously goes very well hand in hand with thinking about law more holistically and more, more academically. I would say, 100%.
Yeah. I think that is one distinction we have. Like, with the degree here at least with the University of London's degree, it's a very
Yeah.
academic degree, and
Uh
you don't study the court procedures at all
huh.
in the
Okay.
first, in the 3 years of your LLB honors degree. So you study all the subjects and the precedents and all of that judgments, and after that there is a step where you do the bar and you study the court procedures when you are studying for your bar exams. Or you're doing your BPTC. So, but I think in JD you have to. It's a combination of knowing the precedents and also applying it in
Right.
courtrooms and all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's right. Yeah, and a lot of people in the U.S. wanted, if you're studying corporate law, a lot of people just do corporate law and don't want to ever be in a courtroom. So then I think, I don't think it matters what they've studied.
So you start. So you worked for a very short time. I think like 4 or 5 years as an associate, and then you
Yeah.
started your own law firm.
Yes.
So when you were working as an associate in the US, was your work related to technology, or were you okay? So it was related to technology, and did it help you to start your law firm when you were starting your own?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So I was working in technology, and that was important to me. Again, I mean, I really, um, there was so much work to do actually in technology, particularly in California, because I was working in California at the time. And the firm background gave me the confidence, really, because you're working under the supervision of obviously very highly accomplished and talented lawyers who are reviewing your work daily. So you do that for a long time. You do that for 5 years, 7 years, I mean, however many years. It helps build your confidence that you know what you're doing somewhat, so because you get the feedback and you can incorporate it and you improve. So you get the mentorship and I think the training. If I had done it right out of law school, I think I would have felt as confident, but I really wouldn't have known much. I mean, it would have been a false confidence. And I absolutely know that my work definitely changed and improved over the many years, as it does just in any profession, when we're working under people who've done it for 30, 40 years or whatever it is. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very grateful for that time because it gave me the foundation, gave me the right foundation and the right ways, the right framework to how to answer legal questions, and how to tackle legal problems.
So, would you recommend the same to a young lawyer who has just graduated and starting? Would you recommend that they should practice for a few years and then start their own law firm? Like, how short can the
Mhm.
duration be? Like, can they start after a year, or they should at least work for 3 4 years, or is that very subjective?
That's a great question. I think what's really important is you build the network of mentors, people who you can reach out to. And if that's like a direct supervisor and you're an associate at a firm, that's one way to do it. If you really want to have the independence of having your own practice, where you already know exactly what it is you want to practice, and that doesn't exist, and you want to build it, I think that's great too. But I would absolutely encourage people to just build that network of internal mentors, internal, um, I guess like even informal partners, informal supervisors who you can call or email and ask them questions, bounce ideas off of them. That's very important, I think, particularly for young lawyers. When you first start practicing, you have a conception, I think, of what law is that's very different than the practice of law, and that also takes time, especially in litigation. I think that we have a movie in our heads about how it all plays out, but actually it can be very different. So yeah, I think that's important. If you find a great place to be an associate that where you're learning a lot and you like the work environment and you like the work, and I mean that's a really good find. Not a lot of people get that. So if you are able to find that and take advantage of it, I would say. But I think it is subjective. I think it will be different for every person.
So one thing that I feel like here in Pakistan, especially here in Lahore, the legal community is very closely knit. Like as you were talking about networking, I was thinking that all the lawyers are connected. Everyone knows everyone.
Okay.
So is it the same like in New York? I mean, it's such a huge city, and there are
Yeah.
like people from all around the world, and it has its financial. It's a financial hub, then it's also a port, and there are a lot of other businesses and technology. New
Yeah.
York is very ahead in technology as well. So is it the same? Like, do you know most of the lawyers, or does it become scattered, or do you know lawyers in your field? Like, if you are practicing law and technology, you would know all the people in law and technology in New York and California.
Yeah. It's such a big network. You do. you do run into people from time to time. So, but it's such a huge community. The corporate technology practice in California, I would say or in the U.S., um, that's a smaller community, and people do deals. You do deals together, alongside each other from time to time. But that's changing too, So I think there's a lot of lawyers, and I think there's a lot of lawyers. Also, I'm licensed in both California and New York, and yeah, I think it also depends on. Excuse me. I think it also depends on the type of practice you have, So if you're in court, if you're just doing a pure litigation practice and you're just in court every day, I mean, very soon you'll get to know everyone, I think. But if your practice is more virtual, in the sense that you're working with companies across the country or across the world, if if you're working across in different states like I do, I'm licensed in both, so I can practice in both states. Yeah, it might not be you may not know everyone, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think it also just takes time. So yeah, I wouldn't say in my experience, I would say it's been less close knit, but yeah.
So, how was your experience starting your own law firm? What were like some of the huge challenges that you had to face, and what were like the advantages? I would like to know, or our students and audience would like to know as well.
Sure. Well, the biggest challenge when you start out is how am I going to get my clients, right? So you don't have clients when you start out, so you have to build them over time. So that was the number one challenge. And I think what's really important is to pick your area. Don't be the lawyer who does everything. There's no lawyer who can do everything, right? So it's very important to pick your area. You can also be you can be the lawyer who just does. I mean, I know these people because they exist. And you can be the lawyer who just does technology transfer agreements. That's one specialty that's like people build professions on. You could just be the lawyer that does high stakes litigation on trade secrets. I mean, that's very kind of, it seems very niche, but you could build a practice doing that. Or, what we've done at the firm, I mean, because we have 6 lawyers at the practice, is, we're doing corporate technology for companies and investors. And we feel it's broad enough to capture a lot of work, a lot of different types of technology. It's narrow enough in that, you hear that, what these guys do, right? You know that they're working with companies generally. You know that it's going to be mostly tech companies. You know who their clients are going to be, companies and investors. So, and in terms of the issues we work on, privacy is a huge deal now. So privacy, data protection, in addition to general corporate governance, investment work, and also litigation. So we do we do it across those different areas, and it took a long time, not a long time, but it took a while to kind of get the message just right. Because when I first started, it was much too broad because I wanted to get work. But then, you can also make the mistake of that being too narrow. Because there's probably things that if you just did one type of thing, as you're building a practice, you can probably broaden it. You can find other areas that make sense to also have in your portfolio of projects. So I think that's the very first thing to think about is like, what am I going to do? And then what am I going to do is going to help you, is going to educate you as to who are your clients, who is your ideal target client. Like draw a picture in your head or make a list of like, these are the people I want to work with, and stick to the list. Because you'll find that a lot of people, as your name gets out there, people will email you for random things, and it's tempting, especially when you're just starting out, to say, okay, I'll do it. Like, if you're just doing privacy law and someone wants you to write their will, so you might be tempted, but unless you really want to build a bigger bridge between trust in estates and privacy, I mean, focus on what you really want to build. When you're first starting out, there's a challenge. There may be a challenge of capital. Like you need a runway. Like all new businesses, you need to have capital in the bank to survive. And so, something I did was I augmented my practice by doing contract engagements with other lawyers, working on other matters as counsel. And that just helped keep capital coming in the door so that I continue to build practice, especially in the first few years, where you're just really trying to build a reputation. So in the first 2 years, you have to understand the challenge is building a reputation and getting your name out. And then at some point, you're really going to get busy, which is good news, So once that happens, then your challenges change. And now they become organizational. How do you keep up with the amount of work coming in? Should you, if you haven't already, should you form an entity, like a partnership? You're going to bring in new people. Are they employees? Are they contractors? Are they partners? Those are the challenges. And then you get to a new phase, and that's the phase we're at, where it's like, just homeostatic, making sure that the ship is running every day, making sure people are happy, the sales are in good shape, making sure you can keep sailing, So, and that's a great place to be. There are also challenges, obviously the pandemic is affecting everyone. It's affected our business. It's affected our clients' business. Everyone's working via laptop, So there are phases, Just make sure you understand which phase you're in and what are the challenges in that phase, and then crush those challenges.
Great. So what I understand, you start your practice and then you find your balance where you focus on a niche and find your ideal customer. So you're focusing on the niche, the revenue starts coming in, you have built up healthy clientage list. So if you look at the near future, would you be expanding into more areas of law, or do you think like in technology and law, you will be becoming more and more specialized? So how do you see where are you heading?
That's a great question. I think we're open to either based on the needs of our clients. So a lot of it is responding to their needs and understanding what it is they want in a world that's different, right? And being flexible and willing to adapt, to those needs. So I could see I don't see us becoming more specialized. I think that, I actually think the challenge is, a lot of our clients have legal departments internally, right? So a lot of our clients, they're also thinking through how do they balance internal versus external counsel, right? So I think I think there's the challenge for us is to, and for all law firms, is to understand how do we continue to provide, value, in a world where everyone's working from home, where companies are, they don't know the future, their customers might have left. So, they're trying to figure things out. We've gotten, there's more disputes, for sure since the pandemic. So that's fine. We have a dispute team at the firm and we can deploy that team. And, there's certainly been an uptick in disputes. Corporate transactions, there's still some corporate transactions going on, but investment activity has definitely slowed because of the pandemic. And, we respond to that. But, your clients can have other corporate needs, so beyond that. Or they might be saying, well, now a lot of our clients are thinking about what new services and products they can offer, and then they need advice as to compliance on those points. So I think everyone's retooling, basically. And that's what you do, in a time of economic uncertainty, is you retool and you try out new things, and you build new infrastructure. So yeah, I think in response to your question, I suspect that I don't think we'll get more narrow or more broad, but I think within that band that we're already in, there will be new projects emerging, and maybe a new need for a new mix of specialties. Here's another good example: is California just passed not just, but they have a new privacy law that really starts to get enforced July 1st, 9 days ago, and
Wow.
it's a brand new law. It's overlapping with a lot of GDPR requirements. So that's going to be something that, regardless of the pandemic, clients will have to implement. So those are questions that are coming up.
I think when you were talking about your corporate client, I got this insight from what you have told me that corporate clients are very different than regular litigation clients. Because with litigation clients, a person will have a dispute, and they might not have a dispute or an issue down the lane in the next 10 years or 5 years. But in corporate clients, you have your client list, and they will have different sort of legal issues. Like you said, the California new law is coming up. So so you develop a deeper relationship with your corporate clients over time by helping them or assisting them in more areas. So I think that's very interesting, and I haven't thought about it like that. So I have
Mm.
this question from Sayed Wakas. He's saying, "What is the scope of international commercial corporate law in New York?"
Yeah,
Uh,
it's big. Yeah, so it's a big market. It's a huge market. New York competes, I think, or I mean, pre-pandemic. I mean, so as of March 2020 this year, it was very competitive with London for this type of work. Many, New York. I would say the vast majority of international corporate law will be based on U.S. company needs. So U.S. companies that are doing commercial contracts in other jurisdiction will typically specify New York law. Certainly, companies that are doing business in Latin America will also typically look to New York law. Once you get into Europe, deals in Europe, there's a competition. I think there's a growing competition over jurisdiction, and certainly in Asia as well. Asia Pacific work, absolutely a competition over jurisdiction. Singapore is very popular. Hong Kong used to be popular. I don't know if it will continue to be popular. Um, New York there may be an opening again for New York. I don't know, but there is a the focus of the international corporate work is certainly it's U.S. firm based. So U.S. companies will specify New York, or they will in Latin America deals, or in some Europe deals. And there's a lot of arbitration work that goes on here too. So international arbitration, state to company deals. So countries, doing business with corporations may specify New York as the jurisdiction. So private arbitration. There's a lot of private arbitrators here, private international litigators who focus just on international arbitration. There's a big practice here in New York of that, and the law they apply could be any type of law. The arbitrator will apply that law. It could be Delaware law, could be England and Wales, could be Singapore, but the arbitration panel would apply that law. A lot is changing because of the pandemic. I'm actually doing arbitrations and hearings through Zoom, so I don't know what will happen if location is going to be as important. If you are in Pakistan and you want to do international arbitration work, I think this is an opportunity, because you don't have to. You can do it through Zoom. So if you have a strong internet connection, what companies are going to be looking for is specialty. Who's the right person for this job, right? So, and I think they're going to be increasingly agnostic to where you're located, but they will want to see proof that you are the expert for this. So, if you want to compete for this business, my recommendation would be to develop signals of expertise. Maybe it's another degree from a university they might know or respect, right? Like a lot of people here in the U.S., they go to business school. They go to Chicago, Harvard Business School or Stanford Business School or whatever it is, because they get the name, right? And then clients will see, okay, they went to this firm, they went to these schools, so they must know what they're doing. So you could consider, some type of brand value. You could consider working with companies that they know and then asking permission to use those company names, right? You could do presentations. If in a world where everything is on Zoom, you could put out some branded 5 minutes. I wouldn't go even longer than 5 minutes. Videos about specific topics that you think might attract them. If you can get client recommendations, in the area. But I think that the pandemic has this effect of kind of leveling the playing field now, in the sense that if you are the expert for the job, and I think you can compete for it. I think you can.
That's very amazing. And I think when you were talking about arbitration, so with University of London, they recently introduced the subject of arbitration in the third year.
Okay.
So in LLB program, it was a brand new subject, and we kind of mandated it for the student in the last 2 years. And the reason because we saw that future of arbitration. And I'm going to answer Mohammed Imran Makhdoom's question.
Sure.
Because it's more related to bar at law. So,
Okay.
Mohammed Imran, so if you become a barrister, that is going to certainly give you an advantage. So at Blackstone, we offer a bar transfer course as well. So you can look into that, or you can go to the UK and do the BPTC regular route. If you can afford that, you can become a barrister through that route as well. So if you are a barrister, a lot of the corporations like Mr. Kumar was saying, that we have these financial hubs around the world, Hong Kong, Singapore, Gulf, and all of these ports and financial hubs. Whenever they do contracts, they choose UK as their jurisdiction, because UK is more accessible. And I'm sure some of them, if they're working with a technology firm, they choose US as a jurisdiction as well. So if you're a barrister in the UK and Pakistan, that gives your client an advantage of knowing that you are a member of Lincoln's Inn and you are a barrister, and you can represent them in UK. So because they don't want to deal with the slow legal system in Pakistan or Bangladesh or some of the other countries where there are certain challenges, because the corporations are losing money if they are having a dispute. So they will choose UK, and UK has kind of like also exported its law system, common law system around the world, and they are still holding on to it, and they provide a swift justice. It's not very speedy. I don't want to use the word speedy. So let's move towards technology and law. So you have worked, so you advise your clients in a lot of interesting areas. So you advise them on social media. I know a lot of people use social media, so I want to start from there. And
Sure.
I want to ask, what does your what kind of legal advice do you provide your corporate clients who are social media companies?
Well, basically about how to do it safely, right? So,
Okay.
the laws are changing. The laws are changing, practically every day. There's data, not just from a data privacy and data compliance aspect, which is becoming more rigorous, particularly if users are being targeted in jurisdictions like Europe or now in California, right? So you have to comply with those laws. The UK is Brexit, so there's a new, you consider UK compliance in addition to EU, in addition to California, basically. There's also questions of libel and defamation. So the US, under the US laws, there's broad immunity. There's very broad immunity to tech companies. Where they basically cannot get sued for things that are posted on their platform. That's very controversial. That's the law. That's changing though, because it's actually changing because the countries are developing their competitive legal requirements or legal compliance requirements for their jurisdictions, right? And they are taking broad views of their jurisdiction that countries didn't used to do. And I think this is a function of just the maturing technology sector. When I was in law school, most technology companies were just based in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, Boston, maybe. Facebook, Zuckerberg went to Harvard, then he moved to California. Google was in California. All the early ones, I don't remember their names anymore, but Friendster, there was a whole list of them, all US based, right? So generally speaking, you would just look to US law. But that's not the case anymore. Now you have competitive social media platforms coming from other countries. Now you have consumers and users all over the world. And we are really, I would say, uncharted waters about which laws apply and when. And coextensive with that is the regime on information sharing between jurisdictions. Let's say there's, I don't know, let's say Ghana, there's a dispute in Ghana over something that happened on social media, and you issue the subpoena. You send a subpoena through the treaty to the United States. There's a treaty with, let's just say, I don't even know, but let's say there's a treaty with the US for data sharing, and you send it, and the US company refuses to comply or fights it. I mean, these issues, we're at the door of all these issues. Countries are passing national security laws all over to about what gets posted on social media. The extent of those laws is all unclear, particularly if the companies host the information somewhere else. So everything is up for grabs, I would say, and there's not a lot of certainty. I think if you are advising clients in this area, I think you need to consider where is the jurisdiction of the company, where is the jurisdiction of the user, where is the jurisdiction of the post that's in dispute, or the information that's in dispute. What are the laws that you need to consider? All those laws, I would say. And then I would say you need to take a position, because the law is so unclear. I think you have a duty to protect your client, to say, this is what we are, and that's our argument. This is our position on this. We think it's reasonable, and we're complying with that position. And I think those are the steps I would take. But there is whatever certainty used to exist here, and there wasn't that much to begin with, is gone, I would say.
So when we talk about safeguarding information for clients and for companies, but you also advise your clients on artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, so I have, my first background was in IT, and my second bachelor's degree was in law. So how artificial intelligence works is that it learns from the users.
Yes.
So it has to soak in a lot of information. So that kind of, so I'm trying to just place that, if you place that within privacy, but the technology cannot work without having information.
Right.
So how does that work? Like, I'm intrigued to know that the US firms, they have a lot of immunity when it comes to defamation and laws. And I think defamation laws are very, they're not very strong in the US as they are in the UK. So maybe that is another element as well. So, but so tell us more about artificial intelligence. Like, what kind of help you're providing them?
So I think when you're doing that, first you have to comply with the rules, the data protection rules of your jurisdiction. So, and then I think you have to comply with whatever contract you put in place, the terms of service. We've all, even for I actually don't know what governs this this platform. Is the first time I'm using it. It's a great platform, but I signed up, so I signed their terms of service, and they've given me, I've consented to whatever data infrastructure is in place here. But so if you're a company that is doing business or you're targeting business in Europe, for example, you have to comply with GDPR. So that means really informed consent. Really complying with information rights requests, keeping track of where all the data is located, and then in addition to that, in your terms of service, you draw out exactly what data you're taking, what you're doing with it, and whether you're selling it or not. So, that's an example. So, look to see the rules of your jurisdictions or applicable jurisdictions, because there could be more than one. And then make sure that your privacy policy and your terms of service disclose, and you get informed consent from your users as to what it is you're doing. And then whatever you can take and whatever is lawful, that's the raw material you use to plug into the algorithms to generate information and insights about behavior and conduct and mean, that's a lot of what, I mean, that's how, that was Facebook's model for many years.
Yeah, the Facebook model. Yeah.
That's how they've been able to develop this algorithm on targeted advertising, right? That's
Yes.
apparently so powerful, right? So this is,
Yes.
that's just based on users using the platform for 10 years, 15 years, to 15 years of data.
Yeah.
Billions of people that they can run through, you know, algorithms, and they can generate that. Then they built a new platform, the ads platform, and then, you know, when you sign up for that, you have access to the algorithms to target specific people, and Facebook will even tell you who you should target. Right? These people might like what you're going to sell, so that can be very. And they built a whole business on
Yeah. So I'm very intrigued, like what you were telling us about the pandemic has made a level playing field, and so lawyers and law firms around the world they can get maybe a small part of the pie or a small piece of the pie, but still it is possible. And if they have a specialty, they can really provide their services and legal services to firms in the US and other jurisdiction. So let's say hypothetically there's a law firm in Pakistan. Like one of my graduates, he started a law firm with a few of his friends, and they did the bar course with us. He did his LLM after LLB, and then he worked for 2 years, and they started a practice. Because the legal system here in Pakistan, after doing University of London's LLB, it's not very complicated. You can get a hang of it in 2 years. So now let's say if they want to grab a client, so in terms of outsourcing, what kind of work do you see in your purview, that these firms from India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, they can outsource, or they can provide their services, or like let's say the low hanging fruit, that some of the work that you want your law firm would spend much time on.
it.
So what kind of work comes to your mind?
That's a good question. So, well, I think, I mean, there have been attempts. There have been attempts over the years, I think, to do just this. I think actually with Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi companies or firms, and I think there's still room. It's not industry practice in the U.S. to do this. I know there have been attempts, and there may even, you know, some firms may even do it. One or two may even do it, you know, rather successfully. But I think the biggest issue is trust, you know, because it's not custom yet, you know. So I think, you know, just displaying that the work, if you wanted to be a subsidiary, I guess there's different types of relationships you could have. I mean, if you wanted to be a subsidiary relationship where maybe you're handling like the low-hanging fruit work for a U.S. firm, you know, like the U.S. firm, I guess, could send you work. It's a different time zone, right? You do it when you're up, and you send it back, and then when they wake up, it's done. I mean, if that's a relationship you wanted to build, I think it's possible. But I think, you know, I don't. You want to pitch it, I think, as you know, what we call paralegal work here in the U.S. I think you'd want to demonstrate. I think it would be helpful to take the bar, you know, to show that you can practice in a U.S. jurisdiction. I don't know how you do that. You know, I don't think the bar is virtual, but I mean, I'm just, you know, just kind of telling you from my point of view. But the other way to do it would be to compete. You know, if you wanted to compete, you know, you have to be careful about. You can't say you can practice if you don't have a law license in a U.S. state. Obviously, you can't say you're practicing law there, and you can't practice law there. But you know, for international issues, you know, U.S. companies may have international legal needs that, again, you could be the expert in, that for which a Pakistani law license, for example, would provide you an opportunity to work on, or would not present a jurisdictional prohibition. And that would be another way to think about this, is, you know, not just grabbing low-hanging fruit from the U.S. market, but actually competing, and also, you know, not competing on price. I would never compete on price, because people are suspicious of something like a Rolex watch shouldn't be cheap, right? A Rolex watch isn't cheap; it's expensive, and the expense is the value that someone pays to get the Rolex, right? So if you're offering the Rolex advice on certain issues, and that's up to you to discover what those issues might be. But if I were you, companies trying to enter any of the South Asian markets, data privacy needs, information needs. There are U.S. companies who outsource, not legal, but they absolutely outsource to South Asia in other ways, with call centers or whatever it is. The garment industry is very popular, working with U.S. companies on those issues. That's something you could absolutely compete on in terms of local compliance with rules, laws, data privacy. I mean, a U.S. company or a European company has to keep track of all of its data all the way through the chain, right?
Yes.
So if there's data loss happening in Pakistan, they're in big trouble, right? And they have to be able to, Europe, especially in Europe. So, providing that angle, for is absolutely something you compete on that a U.S. lawyer could not advise on, right? So think about that. I mean, that would absolutely be potentially lucrative and wide open. Another area is supply chain. Human rights and supply chain. There's a growing movement in Europe, not so much in the U.S. yet, but it is growing, to make sure that consumer goods are produced ethically, are produced in a manner that comports with human rights rules and restrictions. If you can provide that advice at the Pakistani side of the supply chain, again, that's something that a U.S. or European lawyer can't do. So really explore those areas. And I think I wouldn't just confine yourself to thinking, I'll never get hired by a U.S. company. I'll never get hired by an international company because I'm in Pakistan. That's not true. There is a lot of business from international companies in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh already. So look to see what those relationships are and how you can advise on that side of the equation and charge a premium for that advice. I mean, that's what I would do.
One example that comes to my mind is one of the leading law firms here in Lahore. Facebook is their client, and they provide legal advice to Facebook on disputed posts. So, like if there is a post in Pakistan that has a legal connotation or a legal issue associated with it, then they have outsourced the work to the law firm here, and they're doing a good job, and they provide legal advice. And so you're right, it doesn't have to be low-hanging fruit. It can be a real partnership. It can be real value-added work that lawyers from from this part of the world, they can provide to U.S. companies.
Yes.
I'm going to really quickly answer Mohammed Rizwan Hussein's question, because he has asked this question like 3 or 4 times, and I didn't want to interrupt you. So, Mohammed Rizwan, so if you want to do bar at law at Blackstone, so you have to be a licensed lawyer in Pakistan. So you need to have a license from one of the bars here, and then we can send your transfer application, and then you'll prepare the course with us, and then you'll go to the UK and give your exams. The cost for that is around £7,100. But if you want to do your BPTC from UK, then since you have a local Pakistani degree, you don't have a qualifying law degree, you won't be able to do your bar directly. You have to do a graduate diploma in law first from the UK, from a university in UK, and then you can do the bar. So, but send us a message and we can give you more details. I want to keep the focus of today's talk on technology and corporate law. I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to ask maybe one more question from technology, and then we can move to my last question for you today. So, in terms of law and technology, you see there's this huge feature, there is this huge scope. And since the companies are going in other jurisdiction, and the work is there are new laws and regulations coming up, and they are being enforced by different jurisdictions on these companies. So if I have to ask, if you can name like maybe 2 or 3 areas that where you see a lot of scope, if somebody is starting in corporate law with a focus on technology, what would those 3 areas be that comes to the top of your head?
Data privacy and protection will always be big.
Okay.
Compliance, national security compliance. I mean, that's just going to be / like criminal defense. So I think we've all read. If you've taken English law classes, we all know, the epic cases from English history are typically British. I mean, typically criminal cases, and same in the U.S. There's a big one of the seminal cases in the U.S. is the Zenger trial. The Peter Zenger trial, where it was an early case about defamation, right? And it's a criminal prosecution. So I mean, we're entering this. History is a cycle. We're just now in this new. We're back at zero again in this type of cycle where we are going to be seeing that type of, I think we're going to be seeing prosecutions, and I think that there will be new type of Peter Zenger cases, absolutely. I mean, or the cases where the Queen Caroline case is the other one that comes to mind, where I think the Queen of England was put on trial, and there was the question of the scope of the power of the Crown on national security grounds or defamation grounds to prosecute the Queen. I think that's the name of the case. I'm not an expert in English law, but I know I've cited this case somewhere. But yeah, so that would be a fascinating area of law. I mean, if I were starting out now and I could become the expert and criminal defense specialist on national security grounds, I mean, to the extent that we have the rule of law moving forward, people are entitled to lawyers. People are entitled to the defense. And I think that's a very rudimentary requirement of the rule of law. It's counsel for the defendants, right? So, I mean, it would be very interesting. I think a third area would be, I think people are always going to need to know best corporate forms for a new type of business or enterprise, particularly in a world where everyone's working remotely. So, you could build a lot of expertise helping Pakistani engineers, Pakistani entrepreneurs who want to maybe secure investment from Europe or the US, who want to engage contractors in other parts of the world. I mean, what legal form, for limited liability would be the best way to do that? Or if they wanted to sell or license their IP, that's always going to be a need, I think, depending on how robust the entrepreneurship community is in whatever city you're located in. And it is quite city specific. San Francisco is going to be a tech hub forever. I mean, at least maybe not forever, but at least today it is. New York, as you mentioned, is growing absolutely in technology. But yeah, those are some areas that come to mind. I mean, I think honestly there are more legal questions than ever. So there's not fewer, there's more. And I think absolutely that like virtual practice. Everyone is doing business on Zoom. In person is done for the foreseeable future. So that levels the playing field, and I think actually permits creative and understand what it is that your client wants. So really not just in terms of the services you're providing, but the presentation of those services. So if your customer is used to certain branding, certain pitch decks, or certain presentation of information, like adjust the presentation you're doing to that audience. I think that's very important. Just because it's, I think it can be a barrier sometimes to getting engaged. Honestly, I mean, but I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I think you have to learn to look for it, and it can be different. It will look different than the opportunities that used to exist. But I suspect that European and American, probably even Chinese, maybe Brazilian companies are still going to be looking to South Asia for a lot of different purposes, and learning to, and also like keeping in mind that you can absolutely be a partner. You don't have to think about being a contractor or a subsidiary. You can actually be a partner to these companies, and they need partners in the region, and charge a premium, for those services. I think that's all. It's not going to be easy, but keep in mind you're also acting as an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship is never easy. It's always challenging, but it's also the fun. Right? If it were easy, it wouldn't be fun. But don't give up on yourself, particularly, if you think you have an insight as to what it is the market needs. Give yourself the courage to test it, see if the market really needs it, and if it doesn't, you've learned something. Try something else. And then that's how entrepreneurship is. Sometimes you have to tinker, yeah. So, but yeah, I think I think I would be excited. I mean, I know there are definitely challenges. There are obviously health challenges with the pandemic, but there are opportunities out there, I'd say.
So the three areas are data privacy and protection and national security compliance, with an angle on criminal
Yeah.
compliance, criminal prosecution or criminal defense prosecution, and the last one is corporate forms or how
Yeah.
to set up a new business. So all of these areas. So any new lawyer starting should be looking at these corporate areas to practice.
Definitely consider them. Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
see. That's where I see the opportunities are. There could be many more, but from my perspective, those seem like areas that are just coming into being without clear experts. That's the other thing. So you could be, the experts in those areas. If you're the data compliance expert, in Pakistan, you said there's firms that do this work, but if you build a global brand doing that, or South Asian-based compliance, that's huge. That's a lot of work. So,
No, I can really see the value because I mean it's when you're starting out in law, you're really bogged down into like court procedures and some of the set fields that there are. But these emerging fields where if you are working on data compliance and if you can build a name around that, then you will be the go-to law firm for any
100%.
international firm doing business in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And like you said, then you can charge a premium and you can really act as a partner law firm to that multinational corporation.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think this is all very helpful, and this opens us a lot of perspective for us, and I can guide the students better, and the
Excellent.
people watching the video later on our webpage will also benefit from it. So before you leave, I had two questions in mind, and I wanted to ask for your advice to new lawyers, but I'm going to skip that one because we've already talked a lot. I wanted to ask about. Do you have another meeting
I
at?
do, yeah. But it's a
Okay.
solo meeting, but I do have to go in just a minute. Yeah.
Okay, so for maybe a minute, I was intrigued. I don't want to get into the topic of human rights. It's a long topic. So
Sure.
so let me end with this. Uh, like with your work in technology, uh, what is the most challenging area to work in?
Mm. That's a good question. Well, I think challenging how? Like intellectually challenging, or clients are challenging,
In
or
terms of providing services, like let's say you're providing services, you're a law firm, you're serving your clients, you have a big array of clients, and they have a different sort of work. But what work becomes more time consuming or
Hmm.
more abstract because it's very new or there is not much precedent around it?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. The um, I think social media. Social media used to be much clearer, and now it's not. So
Yeah.
I think it's just a haze, honestly.
Uh,
And no one seems to know it. That's the other thing. All these companies have all these practices, and there could be a lot of arguable violations of law going on in a lot of jurisdictions that just haven't come out yet. Let's put it that way. So I think, yeah, I think that I'm really curious where social media will go, and it's going to be in 5 years, the whole landscape could look very different. I mean, walled gardens, for example. If you want to use an app that's based in a certain country that has a global, claim on national security issues, maybe you have to sign a very robust terms of service that's a little scary to sign. Let's put it that way, right? So, there's all these questions that are going to get answered, and the internet could look very different in 5 years. Let's put it that way.
all right. Thank you for your time. It
Yeah.
was an absolute pleasure talking and knowing about corporate law and technology.
Absolutely, it's such a pleasure. Feel free to ask me. Stay in touch over email if you have any other questions. Happy to be a resource, and good luck to everybody. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Have a
Take care.
nice day.
Okay.
All
Bye.
right. Bye bye.